Hi everybody, this is Dan Stolberger. Welcome back to our KFIR Middle East updates on YouTube. We're back from Israel after over a month, and it's just that time again. We will be going back to Israel in September. We have a tour September 14th through the 23rd. There's still openings. What a great time to go to the land. So go to our website, not only to get more information about the tour, but remember, when we do a YouTube, we don't have that much time, and there's much more information on our PDF PowerPoint, and you can get that on our website free, and it's simply go to holygroundexplorations.com. Okay, this is the week of July 3rd, and we always start with our news bites. Some rumblings out of Jordan. Abdullah, all in the midst of the threat of Iran, is expressing interest to form some kind of Middle Eastern NATO. He says, we'll be the first. We'd love to see more countries get involved in a Middle East NATO experiment. So we'll have to wait and see about that. I found this interesting. A new poll out finds that over half of all Americans and almost 60% of evangelicals believe mainstream media is, quote, unfair, dishonest, and biased against Israel. 60% evangelicals, over half of Americans believe that. What a sad day it is for our media. Well, our reports this week will start with something that's kind of breaking news. Hezbollah launched 3 drones towards over the Med towards the natural gas plants of Israel, and they were taken down. Israel authorities say they have shot down 3 of these drones that were heading to one of its gas rigs in a disputed area of the Mediterranean. It was last week that Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah threatened to use force to prevent Israel from using this rig. And so unarmed drones, but you just get the feeling that the kettle is the cauldron, I should say, is starting to bubble over. And now we know that it's time for Lapid. We call it Yair Lapid time. The hourglass, the sun is running out. We know that new election's going to be November 1st. So he's got 4 months, in a sense, to prove himself. But for overall, and again, all of our information that we share with you come from Israeli sources, but it appears that there's some concern that because of the political crisis in Israel, that it may pave the way for Iran to not only come up with a first nuclear weapon, their first, but also maybe they will consider a first strike. Again, the coming Knesset dissolution comes at a time of great tensions between the Jewish state and Iran and her proxies. And this is what we know about Lapid, the current foreign minister. We know him as an ardent secularist. We know that he's a divisive politician. He'll be interim. It's sort of a lame duck situation. He's also considered a U.S. partner, but here's the big deal. As a U.S. partner, Lapid in his position will never agree to go it alone against Iran. And that is a major concern for Israelis. Again, we're going to camp out on Lapid here for a second, but to his credit, his first speech to the country, let me read his comments. He said, concerning Iran, Lapid vows not to back down against Tehran's threats to Middle East security. His quote, We'll do whatever we must to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear capability or entrenching itself on our borders. I say to everyone seeking our demise, from Gaza to Tehran, from the shores of Lebanon to Syria, don't test us. Israel knows how to use its strength against every threat, against every enemy. When I read that, I thought, of course, I applauded that. But the reality is that most of the wars of Israel don't come about when someone in the right is sitting prime minister. It's usually center left that takes place. I don't know if that's because of a perception from the other side that they will be weaker, but I believe that Lapid will be tested over these next 4 months. Now, because Naftali Bennett has stepped down, he announced on Wednesday that he will not be running in upcoming elections. He'll be stepping back from political life. And he goes on to, in a sense, hand the baton of Yamnia, his party, off to Ayelet Shaked. She'll take up the leadership. Friends in Israel tell me that she's truly an up-and-comer, more right, more center-right than liberal in any way. So it's something just to keep our eyes on. It's Israeli elections, man. So this is just horse trading to the max. People can trade, start different parties, join different parties. Unlike for us in America, normally what you were born into, you might change once, maybe twice in your lifetime, but most Democrats are going to stay that way, and most Republicans are going to stay that way. In Israel, that's not the case. They can change all the time. And then, of course, with Bennett stepping out, the disillusionment of the dissolvement, I guess you would say, of the coalition, Bibi rising, okay? Because of Lapid, again, as we've mentioned, being sort of the interim lame duck, Bennett's withdrawal from this political life seems to be paving the way for the return of Bibi Netanyahu. Polls, and they'll change, but right now polls conducted, it was on Wednesday, following Bennett's announcement, show that Netanyahu's position is strengthening. And then we have Joe Biden, and we have this proposed trip that he's taking to Israel. Some will ask, why? Why is he going now? Obviously, Joe is in need of a change of his perception. The approval rate is the lowest of any president. And so with the government in Israel sort of in a free fall position, I think Joe Biden believes that this is the time that he can flex what muscles he has left in order to try to force some kind of two-state solution. Again, make a name for himself, get back on the map, change the polls here in the States. What can he do? So with Biden on his way to Israel very soon, I think the American government is ready to sort of push Israel into a corner because we've got this whole Iranian nuclear treaty. We've got the Saudis. And again, all of these are just promotional points for Biden. If he, remember, and when it comes to the Saudis, he called them a pariah, but now he's going there to do what? Well, gas prices are high. Let's see what we can do. And the one chip that's left to play, the major chip, in what we call the Abrahamic Accords, would be to bring the Saudis and Israelis even closer together. So it's all political. All right. Couple other, let's see how we're doing. A couple other things that we're covering here. Sad to say, the European Union folded. A lot of questions about what's the future hold? How can we diffuse this legacy of hate between the Palestinians and Israelis. And the truth is that it has to start at the childhood level. And the Palestinians' textbooks for their children are filled with anti-Semitic, Israel's the devil, monkeys, etc. sort of thing. And the EU in times past has refused to give money, the money that they've committed to the Palestinians, until they change those textbooks. But in mid-June, the EU released $220 million in financial aid to Ramallah. And of course, on the receiving end, it was really quick that Fatah, in a sense, thanked the EU. And then they said, this agreement is very important because it was completed without any conditions whatsoever. They did not require any changes at all, which still fuels this whole, where does the money go from? And it's go to, and again, it's that concept of money given to the Palestinians, A, goes into the pockets of the leaders, B, pay for slay. It goes to the martyr, or the Shiites, those that create terror, those that kill Jews. Their families get a stipend on a regular monthly basis. And until these textbooks change, don't expect anything else to ever change. There's an article here, again, as I mentioned, with the Palestinians, the so-called two-state solution. You can read it on your own, but it's called Terrorism Unchecked. Whether it's social media, whether it's public speeches, whether it's interviews, whether it's poems, whether it's their music, it's all the same. The same tune is being played. Terrorists and murderers are glorified. All Israel is actually Palestine. Murderous threats ongoing. It's filled all the media outlets. So how in the world can there be a dove, an olive branch, peace between the two? And then we just have been reading about Hamas ponying back up with Syria. This is a major concern because once again, we've got the Iranian-funded Hamas. We've got the Iranian-funded Hezbollah on the north, Hamas to the west, and now Syria, the Golan Heights. There was a chill between Hamas and Syria because of Assad's crackdowns. However, now it appears that there's this coalition coming together, sort of an axis of evil, if you ask me, between Iran, both with Syria, Lebanon, and Hamas, in a sense creating a circle around Israel. I remember years ago an Israeli general was asked about the plight of Israel, and he says, you know, when we're surrounded, the good news is that you can shoot any direction and hit your target. And then again, Shechem, modern day Nablus, at least that's what they call it, the Palestinians. We know it as Shechem. Again, the whole concept of, we hear all about Alaska Mosque, Temple Mount. Nothing has transpired, but it's just rumored gossip, threats, or whatever that causes these massive demonstrations. It's open door for terrorism to take place, stabbings in streets, and it's all based on what Israel is doing to the Alaska, the Temple Mount. In reality, they're doing nothing, but anything that's just spoken creates this backlash. Let me just tell you, the Palestinians are attempting to destroy Joseph's tomb that's in Shechem. Okay? They're shooting Jewish people that are trying to pay homage and visit this. Media doesn't cover any of that. Once again, articles, we're out of time. I'm going to let you read that for yourself. I did mention that we're going back to Israel. Sharon and I spent over a month there. It was sort of a recon deal to make sure that we saw, understood everything that might have been impacted by COVID. While we were there, not only restrictions, travel restrictions and all of that were lessened, actually done away with. You don't need to be vaccinated. You don't need a PCR test. You don't need an antigen test. You can just go. It's wide open. So join us. This is the time. You never know when those doors may close again. So we always are focused on the next trip we have, and sometimes we think it could be our last. So if ever you've thought about going to Israel, it will, again, it's a life-changing trip. So pray about joining us. Again, all the information in our website, holygroundexploration.com. Good to be back with you. Sorry, I'm a minute and 9 seconds over. I'll do better next week. God bless. Shalom.